just adjacent to the Temple Mount. They said, we surrounded the old city walls like a bride goes around her groom at the marriage canopy during the Jewish wedding, and the couple pledged their allegiance to each other. We are married to the land of Israel and the Temple Mount and Jerusalem, and we are not ever going to give it up, she said. The Obama administration recently demanded Israel halt all Jewish settlement activity in eastern Jerusalem and the strategic West Bank, the areas the Palestinians claim for a state. The U.S. demand includes construction for what is now known as natural growth, or accommodating for growth of the existing Jewish population in the areas in question. Israeli leaders accuse Obama of abrogating a deal made by President Bush to allow for natural growth. The deal was forged just prior to Israel's 2005 retreat from the Gaza Strip. It was confirmed by Sharon aide Dov Weissglass in 2005 and in several recent U.S. newspaper columns by Elliot Abrams, a former Deputy National Security Advisor to Bush, who reportedly negotiated the arrangement. The deal was in line with an official letter from Bush the year before stating Israel cannot be expected to withdraw from the entire West Bank and that the Jewish state would retain major settlement blocks there. Aside from the destruction of the Jewish temples, a remarkably large number of massive calamities have befallen the Jewish people on Tisha B'Av. The Jewish rebellion leader Bar Kokhba's famous revolt against Rome failed in A.D. 135 following the Roman siege of Jerusalem, and the razing of Jerusalem occurred the next year. The first crusade pogrom against the Jews in Palestine began on that date in 1099. The Jews were expelled from Britain on Tisha B'Av in the year 1290 and were expelled from Spain on Tisha B'Av in 1492. The Warsaw Ghetto Uprising was crushed by the Nazis on that day in May of 1943, resulting in the slaughter of about 50,000 Jews. Nationalists also mourn the removal of Jews from the Gaza Strip in 2005, which began the day after Tisha B'Av. Now, this Tisha B'Av all began when the 10 spies came back from their trek through the Holy Land, through the Promised Land, and 10 of them said, we cannot go in. They're giants in the land. We're like grasshoppers in their sight. The people's hearts melted through their unbelief. They refused to go in, and God said, all right, I'll make this day live in infamy for you. And so all of the Jewish problems that they have had over the past 3,000 years or so, 3,500 years since the spies went in to the land, all of that, much of that is, has happened on this fateful day of Tisha B'Av. The Book of Lamentations was written in poetic verse, mourns the desolations brought on Jerusalem and the Holy Land by the Babylonians. And so Tisha B'Av is a day, by the way, it was on that day when World War I started. That was the day, you remember, Archbishop Ferdinand and his wife Sophie was taking a tour through Bosnia. A man jumped on the running board of their car and shot them both point blank. And this assassination sparked World War I. Happened on Tisha B'Av. But on Tisha B'Av this year, that is today, they're building the sacrificial altar out at Mitzpah, east of Jericho, near the banks of the Jordan River. Interesting that Israel's Orthodox community says that the temple was destroyed on that day and that the rebuilding of the temple should begin on that day. And by the way, Wednesday figures into that also. It seems that the temple was destroyed, Solomon's temple was destroyed at the end of a Sabbath, and the Romans burned Herod's temple on Saturday evening as well. But the Jews were singing during the Romans' destruction of Jerusalem. The choir was singing, and they sang the Wednesday song on Saturday evening. They sang the song designated for Wednesday, which, by the way, is a song that tells about the rebuilding of the temple. So, from that day forward, the Jews believed that the rebuilding of the temple will begin on a Wednesday. Well, in 1967, on the second day of the Six-Day War, on Wednesday, June the 7th, Israel conquered Jerusalem and the Temple Mount. They kept the Temple Mount for 24 hours before it was given back. But they marked that day as the beginning. In fact, the soldier who spent the night on the Temple Mount guarding it for the Israeli army told me that he heard a voice from heaven, and a bright light at midnight shined down around the Mosque of Omar from the sky, which he says was from heaven and had to be Shekinah glory. And he heard the voice of God say, begin building the temple today. Well, that was on a Wednesday. So it's interesting to see that the Jews have already begun. They have prepared the tools of the temple. They're now building the altar, the sacrificial altar for the temple. And one of these days, they'll get the temple. And even though Jewish construction is halted in East Jerusalem, one of these days the Jews will be allowed to construct a Jewish sanctuary on the Temple Mount. Not only the sanctuary, but they'll build a wall to make a separation between the Jewish sanctuary and the Islamic profane place. Ezekiel chapter 42 tells us. Well, these are exciting days. Keep your eyes on Jerusalem. Hey, keep your eyes on the skies. Keep looking up, for Jesus is coming. Maybe soon. I'm J.R. Church. We'll see you again tomorrow with our analysis of the news.